Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jessica Ward King, the StigmaCrusher here. Today I want to talk about why I am not afraid to talk about my mental illness. And the reason I want to talk about this is because for a long time I was afraid. I was terrified to talk about my mental illness. It started when I really first started having symptoms of mental illness, and the message that I got from society in general, from, yes, my family, from my teachers, from my friends, from everyone, from even inside my own head, was that people with mental illness were frightening. They were usually not intelligent. They were lazy. They were definitely lazy. They were the people that were on disability benefits, so, on welfare. Which of course was shameful to all of those people that I talked about being influenced by. There was nothing redeeming about someone with mental illness, except for maybe there being a little bit of a mysterious quality to them, but even that mysterious quality was kind of tinged with a laughableness. So there was nothing really redeeming about mental illness. And so having symptoms of mental illness was not something that you really wanted to admit to having. It was something that you wanted to hide at all costs. You didn't want to ask for help unless you were absolutely desperate for it, right? And we all knew about mental illness, at least in the cohort that, when I say we all knew, I'm like the cohort that I was in, so my friends, my classmates, we all knew about mental illness. We knew kind of symptoms that were symptomatic of mental illness. We knew, I knew that what I was experiencing was not typical human experience. I knew that what I was experiencing was not typical it was not typical mood variation. But I was able to kind of shrug it off as anything but mental illness. Even while I suffered really hallmark symptoms of depression. I had the sleeplessness. I was eating too much, not too little, of course, but too much. Not that eating too little would have been any better, really, but because I was obese, I guess that's why I laugh a little bit. In any case, I was crying all the time. I was not enjoying the things that I used to enjoy, so anhedonia. I was, not finding any enjoyment in my friends even. I was having difficulty in my classes, so cognitive problems. Not enough to make me lose my grades, mind you, but enough to make me have to work harder. I think with all of these things, all of these hallmark cardinal symptoms of depression showing themselves, and I really did know, and others knew too, but I wouldn't show them. And I would convince myself that they weren't there because I was terrified that if anybody found out, if they found out that I had, even if I found out really, at the root of it, if I had to admit to myself that I had mental illness, that like the sky would fall, you know, the roof would cave in, the everything would explode. It was that bad. It was like I would rather be suffering that badly than get help for mental illness, because admitting that I had it was so bad. And it took being on the verge of suicide to go and get help. And even then, I don't know what I thought, but I went to the hospital knowing that I was getting help for what looked like mental illness. And I just thought that they were going to give me some Valium and some community resources that I would never use, and that, you know, I would go away and everything would be fine again. But they admitted me. And it was in the hospital that I finally realized that I had mental illness. And I was still so terrified that anyone should find out. I was creeping. I was a postgrad at university at this point, and I thought that if my postgraduate supervisor found out, that I would somehow be turned out of the school. I thought that my then girlfriend, now wife, so obviously she didn't, but that she would leave me because I would be damaged, defective goods that she would never want to stay with, let alone marry someone whose, you know, future was so uncertain. I mean, I talked last week about how my mortality is so bad and that I'm going to die early, and, you know, why would anybody want to marry that? And so I tried to keep it secret from everyone that I could. Now, I didn't keep it secret from my girlfriend. There were a couple of close friends that knew, because they'd been the ones that brought me clothes when I was in the hospital and such, and they kind of had to know. It was kind of evident. But it took something really, really drastic. And this was a good 10 years later after that. So this was now like 20 years into my journey when I finally started telling people, like really just telling people that I had mental illness. And it was that a student, when I was now teaching university, a student died by suicide, and that was it for me. That was it. I snapped, and I was like, no more. I had watched that cycle happen for me, where, you know, stigma and shame and silence had almost killed me, and now I watched it kill a student, and it could have killed more. And I was like, no more. And that's when I started telling my story and started working in the field of stigma reduction and stigma crushing. And it was those students that gave me the name StigmaCrusher. And that's when I started telling my story. And I was a little bit afraid at that time that I might lose my job if I told my story, if I said that I had bipolar disorder, and here I am working at the university. That they might think, how can someone so unstable be in charge of the education of our promising youth, or be in charge of, you know, $1,000 or $1 million research projects? But I didn't lose my job. And I thought I might lose some of my coworkers and colleagues and collaborators. But I didn't do that either. I stood up and I said, you know, this is it. This is me. It's been me all along. I have had this all along. And I've been as excellent or not excellent, depending on how you think of me, but as this all along with the bipolar. You just didn't know about it. And people accepted that. And so ever since then, a further 10 years along, I have been telling my story to literally anyone who will hear it, including you. And I am not afraid anymore to tell my story, because if someone is afraid of people with mental illness because they might be violent or they might be, damaged goods in some way, then to them I say, look at me. I'm not violent. I don't bite hard unless... And if someone is stigmatizing people with mental illness because they are worried that we're bringing down the property values because we're all on welfare, for example, to them I say, so what if we are? I'm not. I happen not to be. I'm very fortunate that I can hold down a job and don't need to be on social assistance at this time. But that could change. So could your situation change, fine sir, who is thinking that. It doesn't change the person you are. In fact, for every argument that someone has against someone with mental illness, I have an answer. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm not afraid to talk about my mental illness because I do very well have an answer for everything, and I'm proud of the person that I am, with or without bipolar disorder. And I've had my bipolar disorder for more than 60% of my life, and it's not going anywhere. Probably ever. And so, as much as I don't like it, I like the person that I am, and I'm proud of the person that I am. And so, I can proudly talk about my life with my mental illness, my experience of my mental illness, and say, take it or leave it, like it or lump it. This is who I am. If you want to stigmatize me, if you want to turn me down for employment or for an opportunity, if you want to not work with me or not be my friend, then you were not worth having as an opportunity or as a friend or as a collaborator or as a colleague. It's taken me a good portion of my life to be able to learn to say that, and it's a lesson I try to teach my son all the time. The old lesson of like, well, maybe that's not the kind of friend you want to have. That's the kind of lesson that it took me a long time to learn. Maybe that's not the kind of job I want to have, or maybe that's not the kind of collaborator I want to have, or maybe that's not the kind of whatever it is I want to have if they don't accept me with my bipolar disorder, with my mental illness. I think if I had told my friends in high school, maybe one or two of them would have laughed at me and run away and not been my friend anymore. If I had told my postgraduate supervisor, there's no way that she would have turned me away. She would have treated me just the same. If I had told my family, I have told my family since, and they love me all just the same. I think there are a few people in my life that would have turned away, fallen off because of my bipolar disorder. Honestly, I can't blame them. Sometimes it's a lot to deal with, and sometimes you just don't want to deal with that. But most people, and all the people that are worth having, are still here. So I can proudly say I am not afraid to talk about my mental illness. Take care of yourselves this week. Bye.
StigmaCrusher.